Hi guys, today we'll be solving today's problem of the day, which is find the original typed string 2. Now the objective of this question is to count how many distinct strings Alice can type by repeating each character group between 1 to p times such that the length of the typed string is at least k. Now basically what the final answer to this would be that the total valid strings which are generated minus the total strings with length which is less than k. That would be the answer. Now I would be discussing the answer given in the editorial because I could not solve this question on my own. So I referred a tutorial and I'm going to try to explain what I understood. So since the answer would be total value strings minus total strings with length k, now total value strings, it's easy to calculate. We basically will have to just multiply the frequency of each character group, and to calculate the total number of strings with length less than k, we'll have to use dp. Now how do we use dp? So let's discuss this today's LeetCode problem. Now in dp, fij will be initializing the variable dp and stuff. So how do we fill that? So fij will be the number of ways to form string of total length j, and using the first I groups as in the first character groups, like if there's a b c d, those are the character groups. So the first I groups and the total length should be j. Now we can find out that by using this formula, which is fij is plus equal to f of I minus 1 j minus t for t is equal to 1 to p, where p is basically how many times the character was repeated in the character group. Basically we'll be calculating that for a given length j, now since the length is fixed, now we have to change the number of characters which is appearing from that character group. So we'll be having 0 characters. If it's possible, we'll be having 1 character, but since the length of that word is fixed, we'll be doing j minus 1, j minus 2 until j minus p, and we are taking I minus 1 character groups because we are finding the ith group. Actually this should be I minus 1, I plus 1, sorry. So I plus 1 groups. So for ith entry we'll be having I minus 1. Now since we are iterating from 1 to p, worst case scenario this would be O of k square, which is too slow. That's why we are going to use prefix sum approach. Now in this, what we are going to do is, since we are iterating from 1 to p, we'll just pre-compute that value. So g of I would be f of I minus 1, which is like I minus 1 is the number of groups, and 0 1 2 j basically, because this is g of j. So therefore f of ij is equal to g of j minus 1 minus g of j minus p minus 1, which would finally give us this. Now let's get started. What I'm going to do is, step 1 would be converting the word to the frequency array. Now first since we have to take care of this, I'll just write that at the beginning. Now after this, I'll initialize into word dot length, and step 1 would be to convert word to frequency array, because we have to find, as I told you, the total valid strings. To do that, we'll basically be multiplying all the frequencies of every character group. Not the frequency, like the frequency of all the characters, basically unique characters. So int count is equal to 1, and list integer frequency is equal to new array list. Now we iterate from the second character. If word.char@, is equal to word.char@, I minus 1. What we are going to do is count plus plus. Otherwise, we are going to add the different character group into a frequency array, and we'll initialize count to 1. And finally, we'll again add the last character group. Now after we are done with step 1. Now step 2 is we'll basically find the total valid string. So we'll just multiply all of them. So since it can be a very very large number, we are going to initialize a long. Now for int f in frequency, and we'll have to do a mod over here. Now we'll basically check if frequency of, like, if the number of character groups is greater than or equal to k. That is, let's take a condition where it's AA, BB, CC, DD. If k was 4, that means the number of unique character sets is 4. So we have to at least take one character, right? So if we take just one character, so it will be 4 already. So the number of strings with length less than k is 0, right? Because we are taking every character at least once. So since k is 4, the number of unique characters, number of character sets actually is 4. So since the number of strings which length less than k is 0, we basically just return answer, that's it. So frequency dot size is greater than equal to k, then we just simply return int of answer. Since we have initialized answer to be long, that's why we did a mod over here, because you have to return modulo of this. Did I initialize? Yeah. Now after this, the third step is to initialize the DP arrays, because if we are not going to, like, basically we have strings with length less than k, right? So how do we find it? Using DP, using the method I just discussed before. Sorry. Now f is basically the number of ways to form word of length j, and g is going to be the prefix sum of f, like I showed in the exam, like while explaining this. And we know that for length 0 it will always be 1, and we are going to fill g with 1, since the prefix sum will be 1, right? Like if f of 0 is 1. Now our next step is going to iterate through all the groups. The next step is to iterate through all the groups. So we are going to do that. We'll be iterating over the entire frequency array, because we'll be taking one frequency and then iterate over, like we'll be checking for every we'll be filling the f array, because we have to look we have to look from the frequency 1 to the current frequency f. So to do that, I'll start by iterating over the frequency array. And I'll be initializing a new array. I'll tell you why later on. Now I'll start filling this array, where int j is equal to 1. Why j is equal to 1? Because we have already filled f of 0 as 1, so we'll start by f of 1 now. J is less than k because the length is k, because we are finding total strings with length less than k, right? That's why we have initialized it to k, like with the length to be k. We have this condition because we are going to look whether if it's there in the array. I'm so sleepy right now. Sorry if my energy level is slightly down. So I'll be adding more to it and then modding the whole thing because I'm not too sure of it. If you know, let me know. Yeah, so this f of this is basically g of I minus 1 because this is the formula that we are using, right? This is exactly the same thing which I have written over here. And after this we'll basically create another new function which is j of new, because we are basically iterating over this. We are basically filling for every frequency, right? So the count basically keeps on increasing, and that's why the prefix sum keeps on increasing. Okay, so I have computed the prefix sum. Now what we are going to do is we are going to assign this new frequency array that we have just created. Not frequency array, I'm sorry, the new length. We have updated the length of the count of every length basically, and we are going to just point it towards the new array which we have created. And what we are going to return is as I told you, int of, it's going to be answer minus g of k minus 1, and we're going to use the same logic where we add mod and then we do the mod of the entire thing. So we'll try submitting this. Okay. Do you see the issue? Yeah, I do not see the issue. Um. Oh, no, wait. This should, I think, be j minus 1. I minus 1 does not make sense. Let's try submitting this code. Great, thank God. See you in the next video.